Elliot, I was going to ask, listening to and watching the incredible performance she did of Don't Worry, Kyoko, and knowing what was going on at the time with her daughter, that, I mean, it just tears your heart out, what she did on that. Was it widely known that, that they were having to go through this custody battle at that time? Would an audience have been clued into that?
No. And for those of you who might not be familiar with it, Yoko had a daughter with a man who would later kidnap Kyoko, her daughter, and John and Yoko spent a fortune with private detectives going around the world trying to find out where Kyoko was for years and years and years. Kyoko's father was a fundamentalist who kept her secreted in safe houses all around the place. He felt that John and Yoko would be a terrible influence on this little girl with things like bed-ins and nudity on their album cover, etc. So when Yoko sings, "Don't worry, Kyoko," don't worry, she is telegraphing a message to her daughter. She once took out an ad in People magazine addressing it to her, saying, "If you should come across this article on your mother, for years, fake Kyokos would show up at the Dakota building and try to convince the watchman to let her in to see her mother." One of my assignments back then was to interview Kyokos to see if any one of them actually was a candidate. After all that time and after all that money, after Kyoko turned 21, she did show up at the Dakota building. She did speak to her mom on the phone, who asked the doorman to let her up to the top floor, and they reunited. It's a cry, it's a wail, and even more to your question, Yoko never received the respect that she deserved, ever. I go so far as to say that she was one of the most vilified women of the 20th and 21st century. It wasn't until after John Lennon's murder that people began to look at her in a different way. She said to me once on the phone, "That's a pretty high price to pay for widowhood." I wish you could know her as I have for more than 50 years. In many ways, she's very, very different than the public image, but always passionate, always philanthropic, always committed. Long before John and Yoko met each other, Yoko published a book called Grapefruit. And Grapefruit was a series of, you could call them poems, or she called them instructions. And almost each page began with the word imagine. Imagine you're walking down the street and a cloud rips your dress. Like a haiku or something of that nature. She was the one who used the word in the instructions, and she was also the one who, again, promoted John to express himself more importantly, more openly, and the rest of the avant-garde stuff, which I don't completely understand.
Elliot, a question for you. Living as I did in England, one watched John become political first in 67, 68, really political, and get involved in the British politics. And then, of course, when he moved with Yoko to America, he became involved in American politics. When I speak to young people about the Beatles and John, the thing that I say that was the most impressive about John is that the world's most powerful man at that time, Richard Nixon, was in fear of John. And I still think that's an incredible concept when you think about it. How aware do you think was John of how much danger he was placing himself in by having the temerity to challenge Nixon and challenge the Vietnam War? And the follow-up to that is, was there any schadenfreude once Nixon went down over Watergate? Did John, it still took another year before he got his green card, but did he have any justifiable satisfaction when Nixon turned out to be exactly the dirty trickster?
As most of you no doubt know, forces in the White House leading all the way up to former President Nixon were afraid of John's influence upon so many younger people and so many people of voting age, and the Vietnam War was raging. And the word went out that anything that could be found on John, or any method that could help get him out of the United States, would be useful to the administration. J. Edgar Hoover, who was the head of the FBI, the only head of the FBI, issued the orders for John and Yoko's phones to be tapped, for cars to follow them wherever they went. This is not me speaking. The ACLU filed an amicus curiae, one of those things, to release all the secret documents that the CIA, the FBI, and other intelligence agencies were holding on John. And thousands and thousands of those pages came back. They're online. There's a book called Come Together by Professor John Wiener, who documents that. They were very afraid of it. They discussed it with Dick Cavett during my first in-person meeting with the two of them in Ojai, California. Yoko took me into the bathroom, turned on the water in the bathtub, asked me to sit close to her, and told me, whispering, "Everything that we say is being recorded. Don't say anything that could get us into trouble."
And this comment from Sean that I came across in the book with this whole package, I thought was great, and I made a good note to wrap up on. Sean said, "I've spent most of my life trying to avoid speaking for him. But I do believe that one thing that was consistent about my dad, intellectually and artistically, he was never the same from one year to the next. His mind was always evolving. He was always discovering new ideas and inspiration. Whatever you think John Lennon would think today is probably not it." So thank you for your attention, for your great comments, for your enthusiasm, and go forth and enjoy. Thank all of you for being here too. It's been a real